The two giants of the NHL, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, the faces of the game. What do you do with them in the fantasy realm? It's a hot topic, and we're breaking it all down for you on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with everything that you need to know from around the NHL with all the updates as well. Big time bets. Let's tap in and get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Capitalizing on a player's fantasy value when it's red hot is one of the main angles to take your team to the top, keeper dynasty or otherwise. And we're talking all about it on the latest edition of your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, joined as always by my distinguished co-host, Mr. Steele Rodin. On this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. You know what it is. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen. Steele and I could not do this without y'all, so salute. Thank you so much. We see you and appreciate you. Steele, there's a lot going around in the NHL right now. We say it basically on every single episode, and you and I always want to try and cover a bunch of different fantasy angles, and I think the one we're going to get to after we do a little roundup of some key injuries over the last couple of days, because that's obviously an angle that all astute fantasy GMs are covering as well. Joel Eriksson Ek, Chris Tanev, and a little bit of news on Adam Fox, probably the biggest piece. Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, for different reasons, both very much in the media, both top of mind. What do you do with them? You and I haven't spoken about this off air. I'm excited to get there. Big time bets at the end of the episode, which we will tease. I got a pick for tonight, Wednesday late game. I got some picks for Thursday as well because this is dropping late. Over to you, my friend. What are you seeing from some of these injuries? Because there is fantasy impact that we need to discuss.
Yeah, well, first off, let's start with that Boston Bruins Toronto Maple Leafs game. What a game it was. 5-4 overtime win for the white and blue buds out there, our boys in Toronto. Mitch Marner absolutely loves TD Garden at this point. Sets up McDavid for the game-winning goal against Team USA. Scores the game-winning goal himself in overtime against the Boston Bruins. He had a big night, 2-goal night for him. Morgan Riley had a big night. So gotta give a shout out to our boys out there from the Maple Leafs first and foremost. But it is a tough loss. Chris Tanev isn't the most sought out defenseman in fantasy leagues, but he is still a key piece and a crucial piece to the Leafs organization and for a few GMs out there who own him, especially in categorical leagues. With the blocks and the hits. In those peripheral categories, he will miss Friday's game against the New York Rangers. He's not expected to be out for long, but he will miss at least the next game, maybe two, with an upper body injury. Got hit hard into the boards, left the ice holding his right arm, so he did not return to that game. He will be out for the upcoming game.
Someone's going to have to step in for him, Steele, so there's a value right there.
Yeah, someone will have to step in for him. We've seen some defensemen come in and Jake McCabe, Morgan Riley have stepped up in the last few games as well. But, again, for some of those options out there, we're going to talk about Adam Fox. You're going to have to replace him somehow for the upcoming future. And we've talked about it multiple times throughout the season. Guys like Jackson Lacombe, Bowen Byram, Racco Gudis for those banger league categories out there, Jake Middleton. There's a lot of defensemen who are still out there on the waiver wire, less than 40, 35% on Yahoo, varies in ESPN and other fantasy platforms too. But there are options out there for guys like for GMs out there who are now missing Chris Tanev and Adam Fox.
I'm intrigued to talk to you a little bit about Joel Eriksson Ek after we get past Adam Fox. Chris Tanev, got to be mentioned, especially because this is a good Toronto Maple Leafs team, and someone is going to have to eat some minutes. Morgan Riley had a massive 4-point night against the Bruins, but there's minutes to be had. So I think that's one of those angles that a really good fantasy GM is going to pounce on. It's not like exactly you're out there looking to replace Chris Tanev, but perhaps there's some value here. While he's gone, the guy eats a ton of minutes, so make sure you got your finger on the pulse. Adam Fox, look, the top four defensive pairing for the New York Rangers now, Ryan Lindgren and Braden Schneider on the top pairing. Keandre Miller, perhaps with Will Borgen. A shuffle up of the lines means, once again, opportunity. But honestly, Steele, I don't know what you think about this take. After they traded away Jacob Trouba, and I understand everything that happened there, kind of a frustrating season for Trouba as well. This Rangers blue line went from a very serious strength to a very serious concern in a matter of a couple of weeks. So Adam Fox being out, I think is, yes, a fantasy take that needs to be paid attention to. But with the Rangers battling for that fantasy or for the wild card spot, this might be a serious blow to their chances. A team that has been very much up and down, 5-5 over their last 10. I just don't see it for the Rangers without Adam Fox. And I know it's just one player, but we were just starting to perhaps buy into a bit of a comeback from this team. And I think Adam Fox, aside from Shesterkin, maybe that's an obvious take, this might be too much for this team to overcome. I don't know what you think about that, Steele, but that's where I'm kind of feeling this sits for this injury for this team right now.
It's a massive loss, especially for fantasy GMs out there, including myself, who actually just traded for Adam Fox a few weeks ago. But they're going to have to rely heavy on Igor Shesterkin. They're going to rely heavy on their forward group, making sure they come back check, get into the defensive zone, get in good position to help out their defensive group, because this is a completely different blue line from what started the season back in October. A lot of trades over the season. You know, they really wanted to turn this ship around from where it was headed back in early November and December, when things were going south for them. Adam Fox, you know, it has come out that it doesn't seem like it is going to be a season-ending injury. He won't miss the remainder of the regular season, but he will be out for significant time. And for me, you know, there's no specific timeline, but that says to me that he's at least out for majority of the month of March, if not for the entire month of March. So this is a huge blow, especially a few weeks away from the fantasy hockey playoffs right now. It's a huge loss. Again, speaking on Chris Tanev, there's a lot of options out there on the blue line. Even if you're in a 16-team league, there are still a lot of options on that blue line to fill those gaps. And a guy like Adam Fox, you know, I talk a lot about peripherals, and Adam Fox doesn't jump off the page peripheral-wise, but he still has a lot of blocks in his game, or he gets a lot of blocks in his game. As much as I would like to see him shoot the puck a lot more, he still shoots at a decent amount. 48 points in 58 games. He's been tremendous. He's been pretty good this season compared to, again, what we've seen over the last 3 years of his career where he's been outstanding. He's still been pretty good. So it's an unfortunate loss for the New York Rangers.
I think this is a classic case of sometimes having to separate fantasy from the importance of a player on the ice, just real life, what he means to the New York Rangers. This guy at times can be frustrating fantasy-wise, you know, like you're looking perhaps for those peripherals. Maybe that's a mistake. Sometimes he can go hot and cold is all I'm trying to say, Steele. And he's just so important to the Rangers this season. 5 goals, 43 assists, 100 shots on net. Obviously, the shots have kind of been dipping down over the last 2 seasons here. I'm very intrigued to see if he can come back and still provide value at the end of the season. Let's move on to Joel Eriksson Ek, though, because, look, this is definitely one of the more frustrating pieces this season after how much you and I, and probably a lot of the fantasy hockey community, has fallen in love with Joel Eriksson Ek. Let me tease it up and I'll throw it to you for after the break because you're the expert here. A big time disappointment, right? After it's been kind of building up to what we thought might be a really big, maybe breakout type season for Joel Eriksson Ek. Also, though, for the Minnesota Wild dealing with Kaprizov. I want to have your entire take after the break. 24 points, Steele, in 42 games. Can the Minnesota Wild recover? I want Steele's full breakdown after the break. No pun intended. We'll have big time bets coming up at the end of the episode later in the week. A lot more coverage to make sure that your team is in prime position down the stretch here. Waiver Wire Mondays. Tap into the channel, like, subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your posts at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. You know you don't want to be in that spot about hiring yesterday. The pressure's on every day. The right person could be overlooked. That's exactly why with the sponsored jobs, you come in super handy. Now, speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support the pod by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Means the world to both Steele and I. That's not just lip service. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need.
And once again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every single day with your boys, Flip, Livingstone, and Steele, Rodin. Hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review.
Boom.
We just got done finished talking about some key injuries to blue liners, Adam Fox, Chris Tanev. We did mention the other day or the other episode, Joel Eriksson Ek will be out on a week-to-week basis. He has been placed on injured reserve for the Minnesota Wild, so he will be out for quite some time as well. Once again, just a massive loss for a playoff team right now. And honestly, without Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson Ek in this lineup, this roster looks terrifying. Besides the first line of Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi, and Matt Zuccarello. And side note, Marco Rossi's having an incredible season this year. We're definitely going to have to talk about him at some point in the near future too. Besides that first line, everything about this forward group looks makeshift. I mean, Ryan Hartman's also not in the lineup too because he's still suspended as it was reduced from 10 to 8 games. But second line of Frederick Gaudreau, Marcus Johansson, and Vinny Hinostroza. The bottom six just looks absolutely terrifying on paper right now.
Wait, Vinny Hinostroza's still in the league, Steele? What's happening here?
I don't know what's going on. It doesn't look good. With them not on paper, like if you're looking at this team on paper, it looks garbage-like. And I'm honestly, as much as I'm really being negative about the outlook of the remainder of the season. Again, I've said this before. At this point, they just need to tread water. They need to get by without their top dogs right now. And I really do think they can do that. I haven't looked what their remaining schedule toughness is like. I'm going to have to check that out soon. But when I'm looking at the standings right now in their division, they're still top 3 in the Central, right behind the Dallas Stars and Winnipeg Jets. They're hanging on there. The Colorado Avalanche are 4 points back with one more game played. So they have a lot of room, a lot of wiggle room in order to keep this, this momentum and this gap in between them and the Avalanche. And still the Avalanche aren't even playing that well right now either. So it's another huge loss. It's been a disappointing season for a guy like Joel Eriksson Ek, who we absolutely love. We kind of compare him with Vincent Trocheck of the New York Rangers as well, a guy who really just fills out all those peripherals, fills out all the categories, doesn't jump off the page, but gets the job done. And after back-to-back 60-plus point seasons, only having 24 and 42, it's very disappointing. The hits are down, the blocks are down, the shots on net are down. Everything has just dipped from Joel Eriksson Ek, even though the team is playing well. It's surprising.
Yeah, it is very surprising because there's also been times this season where the Minnesota Wild looked absolutely deadly. I know Gustafsson's had some up and downs of late. I don't want to write this team off yet, Steele, and I think that says a lot about what they have on the back end when Gustafsson's going, when Brock Faber, Jared Spurgeon, a very kind of underrated but very tough to play against blue line. And I think that without that, and even the ups and downs of Gustafsson, but without that pairing of Fleury and the goal and Gustafsson, maybe this is a very obvious take, this team might be seriously lost. However, keep your finger on the pulse. Make sure you're tapped into Waiver Wire Monday. We'll have some options for y'all. You know how I feel about talking about Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin, Steele. This might be
boy. That's your boy.
Well, look, these guys, and I know I'm a little older than you, but and I know it's the same for you too. These two players, we've been privileged to watch them enter the league at the same time and do what they have done. The fact also, though, that Sidney Crosby has done the international thing and Ovi comes back, he's doing it in the NHL. There is so much to like here, but let's hone in on the fantasy angle. First of all, shout out to Alexander Ovechkin. I hope you saw that clip of him coming off the plane a couple of days ago, holding up a Subway sandwich and a bag of flaming hot Cheetos. Russian machine never break. The guy had a busted leg, and he's back. I saw something about like goals per game this season. Even with what he's missed, I think he's at the same level of Leon Draisaitl. And I saw something like this. I believe he has 19 season Steele of 30+ goals. That's the most in NHL history. That right there is insane. Here's my take, though. With what's going on in Pittsburgh, mess. With what I think is going to happen with Ovi after, he's going to bust that record this season, by the way. And if Washington goes on a good run because this team's pretty good, both of these players, with what's going on with Sid internationally, their value might not get this high, Steele. So here's my take, and you and I haven't spoken about this. So this is what I think you should do with these players in fantasy. And you know I've said hold on Sid. You've said hold on Ovi. I think it's time to move off these players. And I'm okay if I get some hate here. But I really don't see either of their values getting any higher. Pittsburgh's a mess. Washington next year, if Ovi busts this record now, I know he's playing like a man possessed. It's a lot to do with the record. Let's be real. And that's okay. But I say somehow you package Sid, like if your team's out of it and you can package Sid with someone else and you get a boatload of players in Keeper Dynasty and you set yourself up nice, to me, it's time to sell very high on both these players. And you know how much I love Sid, but I'm going out there and doing it myself in my Keeper Dynasty League. I just don't see their value getting any higher, Steele. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my take.
Look, first of all, Alex Ovechkin, the only reason he doesn't have 20 seasons of 30-plus goals is because it was COVID the one year where there's only 45 games. So
and he had 24 goals in 45.
He had 24. So it is absolutely incredible what he's doing. Number one, Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin are generational players. We've been watching them. I've been watching them. You've been watching ever since we've been growing up, watching the game that we love. And they're two of the best players we are going to be fortunate enough to watch in this lifetime. However, I got to disagree with you on this one.
Okay.
I will agree with you that this might be the highest their value will ever get, but I have no problem keeping them on my team when they're doing what they're doing this season, especially for Sidney Crosby with the talent surrounded around him or lack of that there is in Pittsburgh right now. And he's still top 25, top 30 in fantasy Yahoo rankings, still has 45 plus points on the season when he has nobody to work with right now. It is incredible. Sorry, he has 60 points in 58 games. He's still filling out the peripheral category, shots, blocks, hits, power play points. To me, it doesn't matter. If I have Sidney Crosby, he's still one of the best in the league. He's still a top 3 draft pick. I'm not moving on from him, especially with Alexander Ovechkin. I really do think he can play for another 5 years. You know, maybe he gets the record and he just decides to hang it up. Maybe he doesn't think that he can contend for a Stanley Cup anymore after maybe what happens this season. But with what we've seen from Washington, I still think there's a lot left in the tank. He's 39 years old. Don't get me wrong. He's up there.
Yep.
Besides this broken leg, he's really never missed hockey. He's really never missed that many games throughout his career. I think he can play for another 3 or 4 seasons. And I said this to you the other day. Something that I saw online, and I mentioned to you before we hopped on to record. The question is, when is he going to reach Gretzky's record? It's if it's possible for him to reach 1,000 goals in the National Hockey League. And I know that's a bold statement. I mean, let's wait until he gets to 900 first. But it really is that incredible. You said it yourself, 19 seasons with 30-plus goals. He's 39 years old right now.
So
if he plays for another 3, maybe 4 seasons, there's a good possibility he could reach 1,000 goals in his career. So I know it's bold. It's a long shot still, but for what he's doing right now with the way Washington's playing, I still think he's got a lot left in the tank. He obviously cares about breaking the record, but I think he still has a lot of love for this game. And if Washington's going to be contending, I don't think he's going anywhere.
I don't want to disagree with you, but I do have a couple more points to say right after the break, and then we'll get to big time bets. Make sure you guys are tapping in the rest of the week. Steele and I will be here Monday through Friday, all the way until that cup gets lifted. You know what it is this week. Late starts, but we'll be back to 7 o'clock in the morning the rest of the way through.
Big time bets coming up next. What are the picks Flip and Steele have in store for you? You got to stay tuned in. That's coming up next. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen. Hammer that subscribe button, the follow button. It's the only way you win your fantasy hockey leagues out there. We don't make the rules. You just got to follow them. Hit that subscribe button. Leave that 5-star review. Flip and I really do appreciate all that love and support you show us. Flip, we're going to get to big time bets soon, but last point on Ovechkin and Crosby's fantasy value.
I guess I just want to say, like, I just don't want it to ever stop, Steele. I don't want it to ever stop. I want to continue to watch these guys. I guess I would just leave it at this. I would be okay if I let go of these guys because whatever you do, like let's say you do move off of these players, you're going to get a couple of studs, right? You're going to get probably a really good, you might get a first-round pick and a good young player. So, sure. So that happens, right? And then next year they still go off. Yeah, it'd be frustrating, but you still got what you got. Or you hold on to them and there's a drop-off. Pittsburgh's bad. Washington, yes, it's a great team this season. Logan Thompson has had one really good season. Is it going to replicate? Probably, but it might not. He's also had, he's had some cold streaks as well. I'm just saying, I would rather do that, capitalize now, and kind of be frustrated that they still go off than don't do anything, get a one good end of the season, and then next season it drops off. Will that happen? I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there as a little caveat. I'd also like to throw this out if you don't mind. Been pretty good with the picks the last couple of days, Steele, for the most part. And I'm going to spit this out real quick. The Pittsburgh, it's kind of interesting because I've got picks for the Pittsburgh game and for the Washington game, and I think you're going to like both. The Philadelphia Flyers against Pittsburgh over their last 10, 4-6-0, not jumping off the page, of course. Philadelphia, though, 3 straight wins, including back-to-back against this very same Pittsburgh team in their last 3 games and smashed in the middle, a 6-3 performance against Edmonton. I'm feeling Philly, Steele. I'm feeling Philly on the juice. Pittsburgh's a mess. I don't know if you saw that game against Washington. They look like they're out there ready for the offseason already. 4 straight ugly losses for the Pens. Hit me with the juice and the plus odds for Philly on the money line on the road. I'm going to take that one all day long.
Yeah, I mean, it's been ugly. It's been ugly for the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's no way around it except to laugh it off at this point. I'm there with you. I've got 3 underdog picks, and I really do like these situations. These angles I'm going might be a little bit contradictory to each other, but I'm going with underdogs on Thursday night. First pick, taking the Sharks on the money line at plus 176 against the Montreal Canadiens. Now, the Sharks have been struggling. The record over the last 10 is not pretty. They're 1-7-2 in their last 10 games. However, they're 6-3-1 in the last 10 against Montreal, and they've won 5 straight at the Bell Center. So I'm going to take the plus money. San Jose, after the break, they have lost still, but very close games to the Calgary Flames and the Winnipeg Jets, which they took them to overtime. Could have won that if Josh Morrissey doesn't score in the last 30 seconds of that game, too. First pick, Sharks on the money line at plus 176. I like that. Second pick, I'm going with the Anaheim Ducks on the money line at plus 128 against the Vancouver Canucks. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10 games right now. Again, they've played some pretty good hockey after the break. Good overtime win over the Boston Bruins. Tough 1-goal game losses to the Detroit Red Wings and the Buffalo Sabres. The Ducks actually play really well against the Vancouver Canucks. So that's my second pick. Them on the money line at plus 128. Last pick of the night. This one is a tough sell, but it's an angle I'm going with. The Blue Jackets were on a little bit of a skid before the Four Nations face-off. They've lost 4 games in a row. After the break, they come back, and they absolutely pop off with 2 big wins, a big win against the Dallas Stars the other night as well.
Yes.
I know the Detroit Red Wings are playing good, too. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10 games, but after the break, some very close calls, a loss to the Minnesota Wild, a 5-4 overtime win over the Ducks, and then a 3-2 win over the Wild once again. So some really close calls for the Detroit Red Wings. The Columbus Blue Jackets, they're playing with their speed. They got Boone Jenner back in the lineup. The young guns are flying right now, getting some really good goaltending. I'm going to take the Blue Jackets on the money line at plus 130, underdog parlay, plus 176 for the Sharks, plus 128 for the Ducks, and plus 130 for the Blue Jackets.
Juicy. Also, Marchenko back, making a difference. Dante Fabro back, making a difference. we've talked about the Columbus Blue Jackets at length, so I'll leave that one alone. I don't want to get too obvious, and the odds might not be pretty, but smash it into your favorite parlay, and let's just move on. The Winnipeg Jets here on the road into Nashville. The Nashville Predators have 2 wins in their last 10 games. Winnipeg, I can do the math on this one. Perfect in their last 10. I'm going to continue to bet with the Winnipeg Jets. I don't even care if I'm wrong here. You're going to also probably get a decent odd with them on the road. Nashville at home.
In a back-to-back, too.
I understand that there's probably not a lot of juice here. Over the last 10, 6-4 Winnipeg in their last 10 head-to-head with Nashville. Hit me with the Jets on the money line. I'm keeping it simple. And to bring this one full circle, Steele, no, it's not Sidney Crosby anytime assist, but I think you're still going to like it. Alexander Ovechkin is red hot. Oh, how about he's facing the St. Louis Blues, who in his career, Steele, he has absolutely feasted. And I know these players that you and I talk about, prop picks, of course, Sidney Crosby is going to have good numbers against most teams. Of course, Connor McDavid's going to have good numbers against most teams. But how about this? 27 career regular season games for Alexander Ovechkin, 22 regular season goals. He's red hot. He can taste the record, Steele. He's that kind of competitor. I would not be shocked to see Ovi go on a serious heater here, especially playing against a team that's so ho-hum average, in my opinion. Throw St. Louis in there with the Seattle Kraken. Throw him in there with a whole bunch of other teams that I think are just very, very average. And I'll take Alexander Ovechkin anytime goal as my lock of the night.
And a big recent win for the Capitals over the Blues, 8-1 the other day as well. So coming off a big win, Alexander Ovechkin, red hot hat trick the other night, goal against the Calgary Flames as well. He is inching so close to Wayne Gretzky's record. I believe what did you tell me that it was the Capitals versus Penguins to end off the regular
final
season
game of the year?
Yep. Final game of the year. How incredible would it be for him to break the record or tie it or break it in that game against
Should we just buy tickets now, Steele?
Might have to go. Is it in Pittsburgh? Is it in Washington?
If it's in Pittsburgh, you and I are literally we're pushing for a 14-leg parlay, and we're taking the PJ, and we're hitting it up big time, babe.
Boots on the ground in Pittsburgh for the last game of the regular season. Alexander Ovechkin, you got to keep eye out for the record-breaking season. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Once again, for your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Like Flip said, for the rest of the week, tune in to our episodes at 7 p.m. Next week, we'll get back at the regular time of 7 a.m. Monday through Friday. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets tonight, your weekly matchups, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.